Okay, I'm doing it. We're gonna do a Should You Read, the Winnowing Flame trilogy, and if it looks precarious, it's because it is. Now, an important note, if you are in the United States, or I believe Canada, basically if you're not in the United Kingdoms, you cannot get e-copies of these or audiobooks. You have to buy a physical copy from a UK store like Blackwell's. That's where I got most of mine from. I think Amazon UK will work too, and Book Depository. Regardless, these are not published outside of the UK, which is very unfortunate. But you can still get them, and honestly, the quality of these paperbacks is quite nice. Like, I like the height. Like, this, you're not here about the quality of the paperback, but I think they are very floppy and a good height, and I like the font size. So, if you cared about those aesthetics, this is still a great series. But we're going to talk about Should You Read It because of the content. Is this a fantasy trilogy that's worth your time? Because it's a trilogy. I think each book's about 500 pages, so we're talking like a 1,700 page series. That's a good amount of time. Is it worth your time? And I'm going to maybe help you figure that out. So, just so you know, for me, this was about a 5-star series. It was fantastic. Probably not like one of those 5 stars that's like a favorite of all time, but like really enjoyable, was really everything I sign up for an entertaining fantasy read. I'm going to talk about some of the elements that did work for me, some that might not work for you, and hopefully you can make a decision. So, first thing I think that needs to be talked about is this is an entertaining adventure story. And that's something I loved about it. Like, this is a fantasy truly with heroes, and they are flawed heroes, as we're used to in modern fantasy, but they are people who are like, they got the special weapons, they got the special powers, they got the cool animal companions. They are the heroes of our story, and they have to save the day. It is pretty straightforward in that regard. It reminded me a lot of like watching Marvel movies, even down to character banter and my loving of the characters. I wouldn't say any of these characters are the deepest thing ever. This is not the same as Robin Hobb or Fonda Lee when it comes to character development. Like, these are fun characters. I wouldn't say they were one note. I would say they're consistent in their characterization, but I wouldn't say the depth of characterization is very deep. I mean, they have traits, they have motivations that make sense, but like, this was way more plot-driven than character-driven in terms of its fantasy thing. You do have great quiet moments with characters, fantastic banter and relationship development, but if you're someone who, like, thrives in those small moments, they aren't as common in here. Like, I think a comparable opposite of this would be The Mask of Mirrors and Liar's Knot, which I love, that have so many quiet moments and great character development, like relationship things. So this isn't a negative for me, but might be a negative for you, that these characters, like, you've probably seen them before, although with the twist of this is actually quite a great diverse cast. This is very LGBTQ friendly. It has all sorts of races of people in this work. Like, this is not your standard only white people are in the story and some elves fantasy. That will lead us also into, this is so unique. Like, I don't think I've ever read a fantasy in this world. You have characters that are like really different versions of elves, like pseudo-immortal species, and like, but they're in descending parts of their race, but then that gives them kind of like vampire qualities. You have this land that has cyclically gone through this war over and over and over again, and that has tainted and poisoned the land. So you have these really gross things that grow, like things grow too big. There are these monsters, these like worm-touched creatures, and then also these parasitic spirits. Like, these things are gross and really cool how they work and learning how things are. And this is where the genre blending comes in, because sometimes you feel like you're reading a traditional adventure fantasy stories, and other times you're like, I feel very unsettled in this forest. This is kind of like a thriller or maybe a light horror. And other times you're like, is this a sci-fi? Like, where did this come from? It's all over the place, but in a really fun, I think, seamless way. Now, in the world building, where the negatives and positives might come from is, this is very vividly described. I'm not someone who can visualize very well. My hand needs to be held. If you don't give me very clear visuals, I don't make them. And sometimes even if you are very good at describing things, it might not happen. Like, an author has to trick me. And there were times when I was seeing some of the castles or some of the villages or some of the towns, some of the action scenes. They were in my head. I was seeing it. I was like, is this what people normally get to read like? It was so cinematic. Like, there's a town, or I guess not a town, it's actually quite a large area with this huge tree in the middle of it. And I could see the tree. When we were having the action scenes, I was there. I could the atmosphere and the vivid imagery was there, but that also means that when things were gross, it was really, really, really unsettling and gross. And unsettling, gross things happen, okay? Like, there are some really gooey things. Like, specifically the grossness comes from, like, gooiness and stuff like that with our antagonistic force in this series. So that's like a pro and a con, right? Because sometimes I like having the joy of not seeing things sometimes, but there were moments. Oof. I would say another really wonderful part of this series is that there are real stakes. Like, this is not a fantasy series where you are going to be accurately predicting what will or will not happen to your characters, and that is part of the fun. I'm not here to tell you what happened or didn't happen. I'm just saying that, like, there are stakes. There are consequences, okay? I'm not going to tell you the nature of the consequences unless you blatantly ask me, like, if you have certain, like, things where it's like, I hate reading stories where X happens to characters or whatever. But, like, it was fantastic. Like, I love a story that doesn't play with my emotions like that. Like, I like to be played with, but only when there are consequences and things make sense. Like, that's my big issue with a lot of tropes that people hate, is when you don't have good consequences for actions when there should be consequences. Like, there is a lot of save the world energy, and like one of the reasons why I think Marvel movies would never super land for me in terms of like some of the fantasy series that I've read in my life is that a Marvel movie does not normally have stakes. Like, the end of Infinity War, no one left the theater thinking that what happened was permanent, if that makes sense. And I appreciate works that actually go, no, I made this decision and now we got to live through it together. And I think that happens in this trilogy, and it's done really well. So, overall, do you want to have a team of people who have to learn how to work together and have great banter and figure out what's happening with the world and save the day and have fantastic animal companions? This might be for you. If you want something deeper, philosophical, with really rich character development, that's not what you're going to find in these pages. That's not the story it's trying to tell. It's just a really cool world that has a really messed up history that it's trying to survive, and we get to watch some people figure it out. And, like, the characters are so fun. If you like the main character in the Lady Trent series, there's a character here who reminds me so much of her. She's got so much snark. She's just... She's this rich, entitled woman who goes on adventures to learn about the world, and just, she's the one who brings the team together, and so much sass, so much snark. I love her. She's a 40-year-old black woman living her best life. Like, I love her. We have this character who's literally also a very selfish individual who just ends up working for this woman because she will pay him in wine and money, and, like, he pretty much has accepted he's gonna die one day anyways. Like, he's very just like, whatever. So classic, like, swordsman who hates himself, but like he's way too attractive for his own good. Like, there are characters that are built from tropes in ways that I hadn't seen them, and they are executed very well. Like, it's not groundbreaking, but I liked them. Like, that the tropes are good. The trope pieces are really nice. So that is my should you read for The Winnowing Flame. Hopefully you've come away knowing if this will or will not work for you. I think it's very much worth the time. I get so much anxiety in, like, the good way when I read these, where I'm like, I don't know what's gonna happen. Like, what's gonna happen? Like, I have a sense of, like, it's probably not good, but I never, like, I'm just like, I just get really stressed. And very few books make me stressed because I never trust that a book will have consequences for actions, and I appreciate that this one does. If you have other questions, let me know. No spoilers for the series. If you want to talk spoilers or have a spoiler question, come find me in my Discord, spoiler tag it. I will just be deleting any comments that have spoilers because I want this to be a spoiler-free safe zone. And if you want to leave an emoji, leave a flying creature. A lot of the animal companions fly. There's actually a bat. Yes, leave a bat. Actually, that's the specific emoji now. I will know if you clicked away. It's a bat. And like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.